A History of Eärwa, based on the works of R. Scott Bakker. Original words by Adam Whitehead. Artwork by Jason Deem. Adapted for YouTube by J.R. Hazelton. Part 2. The Age of Men. After centuries of warfare against the Cûno-Halaroi, the ancient inhuman rulers of Eärwa, the Cûno-Halaroi, had emerged victorious. Yet their triumph came at a terrible cost. Though now immortal, the non-men were doomed. Their wives and daughters were lost in a treacherous act of mass murder, and the long march of cruel millennia was slowly bending their souls into violent insanity. Worse still, but unbeknownst to the non-men, their victory had been incomplete. For two Cûno-Halaroi yet lived, Orang the warlord and his brother Orax. Where once their kind teemed in multitudes, only these two had survived the scourging of the Ark. From beyond the eastern horizon, these last two Cûno-Halaroi began plotting their contingencies. Though renowned as the home to the Cûno-Halaroi, and eventually the greatest nations of men, Eärwa is but one of several known continents. South to the Three Seas lie the deserts of Cûno-Halaroi, while east of the vast Caarsis Mountains was another land, Eärwa, the land of the uplifted sun. It was in Eärwa that the first tribes of independent men arose. While their western brethren were enslaved by the Cûno-Halaroi and bred into the subjugated Mwama, the men of Eärwa built the rudiments of their civilization. Over time, they divided into 5 tribes: the Ketiai, the Norserai, the Satyothi, the Skilvendi, and the Ziuhiani. The 5 tribes warred amongst themselves, but were united by a shared religion, the worship of the 100 gods, divine aspects of an ultimate god of gods. In those days, the 100 answered prayers and intervened in the affairs of men. Shamans, the mannish sorcerers of Eärwa, served as mages and prophets both. But jealousy and strife soon arose. The old prophets, the non-sorcerous servants of the 100, declared that sorcerers were damned for their defiance of divine power. After bitter struggles, the shamans were overthrown, sorcery outlawed, its practitioners reduced to a scattered few. This new religion, the precursor to the Cunha tradition, coalesced around the tusk, a colossal artifact inscribed with the sacred stories and commandments of the 5 tribes. In these prehistoric times, the 5 tribes of Eärwa endured centuries of hardships in an unforgiving land. The non-men enslaved or killed any who dared venture into Eärwa. Anguished by humanity's plight, the holy man Engesriel climbed Mount Eshki to pray and fast for guidance. There he was visited by one of the 100, Husielt, the holy stalker. Bowing his face into his own fire as a sign of devotion, Engesriel rose, the burned prophet. Engesriel declared that the 100 had revealed Eärwa as mankind's rightful home, a land held by accursed false men, whose extermination was commanded by the Tusk. Gathering followers, he led the tribes of men westward. The Ziuhiani refused his call, but Engesriel convinced the rest by performing a great sacrifice, slaying his own son Oresh as a sign of his conviction. Soon the 4 tribes and their multitudes swarmed through the mountain passes of the great Caarsis, but eventually found their way barred by the gates of Theont, which the non-men had fortified in ages long past. Great assaults were made, but even reduced by their wars with the Cûno-Halaroi, the Cûno-Halaroi were able to throw back every assault through the might of their Kuya mages. Although the tribes possessed the sorcery-negating relics men called trinkets, for several thousand Kore had been delivered unto the tribes alongside the Tusk, even this would not be enough. Reluctantly, an accord was reached amongst the 4 tribes. It was agreed that sorcerers could again freely practice their magic, but only provided that it was in service of the gods. Thus, the first sorceress schools were founded, organizations composed from the disparate wizards and warlocks of the few. And while the anagogic sorcery practiced by mannish sorcerers is known to be far inferior to the gnosis, the sorcery of the non-men Kuya, the vast advantage in numbers eventually saw the Cûno-Halaroi defenses broken by the hordes of men. And so, the 4 tribes swept across Eärwa from the north and the east, throwing down the great high mansions one by one. Some of the non-men fought bitterly, but others, traumatized by a millennia of tragedy, merely opened their gates and accepted the inevitable. After the fall of Sheol, the others soon followed. Until, of the 9 great mansions, only Ishoriel and Kilauges still survived. Once secure in Eärwa, the tribes found new homes. The hardy Norserai settled in the northern lands along the Niliost Sea. The Skilvendi settled the lands further south, on the Giwanti steppe, and as far away as the Carathay Desert. The Ketyai, the most numerous tribe, made their home on the rich Kirinay plains, and the lands extending north and east, around the seas Menanor and Niranissus. The Sayothi went to the far southwest of Eärwa, settling the lands beneath the Hinayeti Mountains. The first human nations arose soon after. The Sathyothi, isolated from the rest of Eärwa by geography and distance, established their kingdom, the forerunner of the modern Zeum. The Ketyai established the kingdom of Shaigek, the first nation of the 3 seas, around the broad delta of the river Sempis. Another Ketyai kingdom was established at Nilnimesh in the far south, beyond the Carathay Desert. The Skilvendi disdained the trappings of civilization, preferring to remain nomadic pastoralists, dwelling on the steppes and plains of Eärwa. But it was in the ancient north that human civilization first truly took hold in Eärwa. The great river Amris and the surrounding region became the focus for such settlements, with the great Norserai cities of Trisay, Soglish, and Umarau founded in relatively short order. Controversially, these city-states disdained the command of the Tusk to exterminate the non-men, and instead began trading with the Cûno-Halaroi of Ishoriel to the northeast, much to their mutual enrichment. The power of the Umris river cities grew quickly. Somewhere in the 4th century, after the breaking of the gates, Cún Wershau, the god king of Trisay, made a pact with Nilgicus, the non-man king of Ishoriel. As a result of this pact, many non-men came to live amongst the Norserai, instructing them in arts both sorcerous and mundane. The Cûno-Halaroi tutors were called the Siku, and they bestowed upon the Norserai the ancient knowledge of their doomed race, including the secrets of the Gnosis, the most potent and lethal of all forms of sorcery. The next 3 centuries saw the Umeri Empire flourish, thanks to this alliance, as well as the founding of antiquity's most legendary schools of sorcery. In 661, the legendary artisan Emilides founded the Gnostic school of contrivers, the Mitrulik. Then, the non-men Gunursis, an exile of Kilauges, traveled to the ancient north and founded the Gnostic school of Sohonk, the learned school, in 668. The Gnostic school of Mengeka, the cunning school, was founded in 684 under the tutelage of Ketingira. In 750, the weapon known as the Heron Spear, called Sorgil Shining Death in Hirimsul, which had been seized by the Inkorai king Sil by Kujarakimwa himself, vanished from its place of safekeeping deep in the heart of Ishoriel. Unbeknownst to all at the time, the thief was none other than the most famed of the Siku, Ketingira. Ketingira, the Kuya mage who had entered the golden court of Sil and beheld the inverse fire seemingly unscathed, had now surrendered his allegiance to Orax and Orang, returning the legendary weapon to the last 2 surviving Inkoroi. Then, in the year 777, Ketingira, who is known to men now as Meketerig, the man-trader, began his corruption of the school of Mengeka, revealing to them the existence of the Golden Ark and the Inkoroi. 4 centuries later, their efforts would finally bear fruit, when the Umeri archmage of the Mengeka, Sheo Narnra, set about tearing down the glamour surrounding the Golden Ark, finally succeeding in destroying it and making contact with Orax and Orang. In the year 1119, this unprecedented alliance of men, non-men, and Inkoroi somehow managed to slay the Grand Master of the Sohonk, the legendary hero mage Turturga, and thus the unholy consort was born. In 1123, Sheo Narnra announced to the world that he had discovered a means of saving the souls of those damned by sorcery, utilizing a secret hidden deep within the Ark. But this was promptly denounced for heresy. The Mengeka were outlawed, and they fled Soglish to take up permanent residence inside Golgotarath. The consult would spend the next millennia in obscurity, while the Norserai continued to flourish in their absence. In the year 1408, Anasarimber Nanor Ukchera united the ancient North by conquest and declared himself the first High King of the Kunyori Empire. Kunyori rapidly became the largest and most powerful empire of men in Eärwa. What followed was an age of greatness, of warring cities and of clashing empires. An age of Agensis and Benjuka, an era of human achievement that continues to overshadow the nations of the Three Seas to this day. But all the glory of their empires, the intellect of their nobility, and the might of their sorcerers could not save the people of the Kunyori from their wretched fate. For after 2 millennia, the apocalypse had come for the ancient North, and death came swirling down.